Hey guys, tonight we slip into the smoky folds of a Mongol feast, yes, that Mongol horde. Imagine the chill of the open steppe at dusk, your boots caked with mud, your cheeks flushed from the wind. In the distance, a line of gears, those felt-covered yurts glow like lanterns against a bruised purple sky. Smoke curls upward, carrying the heavy scent of roasting meat and dung-fueled fires. Someone blows a conch horn, low and long, and you're ushered toward the gathering. You're about to eat like a warrior who rides across continents, sleeps under his horse's belly, and toasts to the moon before charging into battle. Someone's cousin once lost a finger for walking in front of a chieftain's bowl. There are no plates, no utensils except knives tucked into sashes. Everyone eats with their hands, or carves directly into whatever slab they're holding. Fermented mare's milk tastes like warm vinegar blended with grass and regret. Not gentle, exactly, there's too much bone cracking and throat clearing for that, but warm in its own primal way. You learn quickly that praising the cook is essential. Unless the cook is your host's cousin, in which case mockery is the preferred seasoning. They carry dried meat called borts, a kind of medieval beef jerky they could soak in water and boil over a campfire. Mongols believed in signs and spirits. If an animal came near, it might be a messenger, or dinner. The line was fuzzy. Some even kept little bags of it tied to their saddles, snacking mid-gallop like some apocalyptic lunch break. Fires pop and hiss. Horses whinny softly in the distance. The unspoken rule is this: you carve what you eat, and you offer the best cuts to your elders. Someone near you fails to do this. An old woman taps her wooden staff sharply against a bowl. The man sheepishly hands over a better piece. You don't ask, you just bite. You haven't. She tears off a glistening piece and presses it into your hand. Good for the heart, she says. It's gelatinous, salty, slightly sweet. Not bad, really, but definitely a texture you'll remember forever. A group of younger men suddenly erupt into a competitive game of bone flicking, using knuckle bones from sheep or goats to hit targets in the dirt. Not a melody exactly, more like a vibration, throat singing. The harmonics ring strange and beautiful, vibrating in your chest like a second heartbeat. Others join in, some clapping, others banging on overturned bowls. A dog howls in the distance. Somewhere behind the gears, a horse snorts and stamps, sensing the night thickening. And yet, no one seems in a hurry to sleep, not when the food keeps coming. For a second, the feast feels like a concert for the wine itself. Baits are exchanged. One man kisses his knucklebone for luck. Another throws his and accidentally knocks over someone's bowl, leading to a friendly scuffle that ends in groaning laughter. Meat sizzles over open flames while someone pokes it with a stick carved from juniper. And drink to the fire, a nod to the sky gods and ancestors watching above. Sure enough, a man near the head of the feast pours a few drops of arag onto the ground and mutters something under his breath. No one speaks while he does. Then, like the flipping of a switch, laughter resumes. You lean back slightly, hands sticky with fat, breath heavy with onions and smoke. Around you, warriors murmur and chuckle. The woman with the arag passes the cup again. This time, you drink a little longer. The woman chuckles. She's clearly seen this reaction before. You sit cross-legged, mirroring the posture of the wiry man beside you, who nods with a mouth full of mutton. You take a sip and try not to think about what floated in it before it reached your lips. Your motion toward a low cushion near the middle ring. The outer ring is for common warriors, the inner ring for generals and khans. You're somewhere in between, which means you're either respected, or someone's about to prank you with fermented yak cheese. Just a heads up, you probably won't survive this. Not because of swords or arrows, but because your modern stomach has never met fermented mare's milk. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. To your left, a weathered woman with silver rings in her ears drinks deeply from a horn cup, then offers it to you. Arag, she mutters. You nod politely and take a sip. And hey, drop your location, and local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when you all listening from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You arrive late to the feast, not ideal, since Mongols aren't big on ceremony, but they are big on order. A leather tarp has been spread across the ground, and hunks of meat glisten under torchlight, some charred, others just barely cooked. To your right, a young boy no older than 10 gnaws on a lamb's rib with military focus. Your tongue recoils. Still, something about this gathering feels familial. As the meal begins in earnest, conversation builds not in polite chatter, but in booming declarations, war stories, and the occasional belch of approval. A warrior with a face like a crumpled map tosses you a chunk of something that may have been part of a goat or a very unlucky deer. And here's your first historical fact. Mongol warriors were famously self-sufficient eaters. A stray dog edges into the firelight, and no one chews it away. Someone passes you a steaming bowl of broth, the color of cloudy amber. It smells earthy, like boiled onions and wet leather. Historians still argue whether the Mongols had formal mealtime prayers. What's clear is they did offer bits of food. You're handed a knife, the blade bone-handled, its edge slightly chipped, and a slab of meat so large it could double as a footstool. A quirky tradition unfolds as the moon rises higher. Through the din, a deep-throated voice begins a song. The woman beside you leans over and asks if you've tried the sheep's tail fat yet. As you settle into the rhythm of eating, drinking, and pretending to know what you're doing, the fire crackles lower. You feel full, warm, and maybe a little lightheaded. And somehow, in this foreign cold beneath a sky stitched with stars, you begin to feel like you belong, at least until they bring out the mystery organs. It's one thing to gnaw on fire-charred mutton in the open air. It's another thing entirely when they bring out the next course, steamed organs, still steaming in a hide-lined basin that looks suspiciously like it was once a part of someone's saddlebag. No plate, no explanation, just that. No, to soft, spleen, to squishy. Your best bet is to smile, chew slowly, and maintain direct eye contact with the nearest elder, who seems to be gauging your facial expressions like a hawk watching for weakness. You barely have time to wonder whether the smell is coming from the food or the container before someone scoops a glistening chunk onto your piece of felt. It's about proving yourself, holding your liquor, finishing your portion, accepting the weird bits without gagging. All of it's part of the unspoken test. Most of them double as tools, weapons, and if you're lucky, bread slicers. Unfortunately, your piece slips mid-cut and lands in the dirt. There's a long pause. A child retrieves it for you, wipes it on his sleeve, and hands it back without a word. Welcome to the steps version of the 5-second rule. You notice that no two knives are the same. Some are curved, some jagged, some with horn handles or leather-wrapped grips. And all of them, without fail, are used to cut food, defend honor, and, occasionally, gesture dramatically during stories. The sound is haunting, mournful, and strangely perfect for this scene. A few people begin clapping, but not on beat. That's fine, rhythm isn't the point here, survival is. Get queasy, and you'll be politely laughed at. You realize it's the same one that brought you here earlier today, tied just outside. You listen as tales are swapped across the fire. Some are clearly exaggerated, a man who hunted wolves with bare hands, a warrior who outran a falcon. Others are so specific and quiet, like the old woman recounting her son's final meal before battle, that they hit you in the chest and stay there. Mongols often ate with their horses tethered nearby, a reminder of both dependence and survival. No politics. No one debating the meaning of a song lyric or fighting over which Khan was better. There's an unspoken rule here. The table or tarp is neutral ground. If someone has a grudge, they save it for the wrestling ring, not the dinner circle. You might ride your horse all day, milk it for dinner, and still trust it to carry you into war the next morning. Not a clinking of glasses you re-drinking from horns and bowls, but a collective raise of vessels, and a booming cry in unison. You catch the meaning loosely, to the wines, to the con, to another meal, or, be it was, to full bellies and no arrows tomorrow. Translation's fuzzy, but the sentiment's clear. Not exactly your typical pet dynamic. Refuse, and you might be quietly remembered as that soft outsider who couldn't stomach a boiled lung. Everyone watches. This is not optional. You could slide a coin across your palm like a puck on ice, but no one else seems to mind. In fact, slick hands seem to be part of the charm. There's a kind of gleeful savagery to it. You suck on it instead of chewing. It softens eventually, in 100 years, maybe. When you wipe your hands on your own tunic, an older man laughs and nods. The wind outside rises slightly, making the felt walls ripple like sails. Someone starts singing again. The words are unintelligible, but the tone is deep and aching. Now you're Mongol, he says. The texture is somewhere between chewy and uncooperative. You make an educated guess. Liver. And here's your next lesson. The Mongol feast in just about eating. You're not sure what test you just completed, but you're alive, and you're still chewing. Mare's milk, cow's milk, goat cheese, sheep yogurt. If it came out of a mammal, they fermented it, dried it, or turned it into something chewable. One fringe recipe even involved boiling milk in a sealed container underground to make it earth-aged. It means you're an honored guest, someone worth testing and trusting. To refuse it is to insult the host's generosity. To accept it means, well, you've got to eat an eyeball. Historians still argue whether that last one was a delicacy or just an elaborate dare. It's technically alcoholic, but at this point, you're starting to suspect it's also a disinfectant. He offers you a pinch, you accept, more out of peer pressure than desire, and immediately regret it. It sucks the moisture from your mouth like powdered chalk. It's good for your teeth, he says, grinning with exactly one visible tooth. It burns going down, but by your third sip, the edges of everything begin to fuzz slightly like your brain is wrapped in wool. You wash it down with another gulp of arag, that same fermented mare's milk with the tang of a barnyard floor. Mongols, you quickly learn, loved their dairy. In fact, dairy was their culinary lifeblood. Nearby, a man pulls something from a pouch at his belt and starts sprinkling it over his meat-dried, crumbled cheese that smells like gym socks and ancient resentment. There's no cutlery here, unless you count the variety of personal knives every adult carries. You try to mimic the motions. Hold your meat in one hand, carve downward with the blade in slow, confident strokes. By now, your fingers are greasy, not metaphorically, literally. The music starts again, this time a stringed instrument that looks suspiciously like it was made from horsehair and grief. Then comes the moment you've been dreading. The host offers you the eye. It's sheep. You think, hopefully, a glossy orb, gently poached, resting in a carved wooden spoon. Here's a fact. In Mongol tradition, offering the eye is a sign of respect. You pop it in your mouth. The outer membrane gives with a soft pop, and the inside is oddly creamy. Somewhere in the room, someone exhales in approval. You've passed. From somewhere outside the gare, a horse neighs in the cold. The feast drags on in the best way, timeless, boundaryless, drenched in firelight and laughter. One of the strangest things you notice is how little argument there is, and in a surprisingly modern twist, there's also a toast. The final course for now is dried milk curds called arul, rock hard and sour, likely invented just to give Mongol dentists something to do. As your belly fills, your limbs grow heavy, and just as your eyelids begin to droop, someone nudges you awake. The main course is over. Next up, the meat mountain. You think the meal is winding down. You're full. Your hands are coated in a thin sheen of mutton grease, and your stomach is doing slow somersaults between layers of arag and goat cartilage. But that's when they bring out the meat mountain. There are skull halves, knuckle joints, mysterious tubes curled like angry snakes. Every color is some shade of brown or gray. No flourish, just gravity. It thuds with a soft splatter, and the feast begins again. It smells like salt, smoke, and something wild. You carve what you dare, you eat what you cut. And if you mess up protocol, say slice into the wrong section before an elder has claimed it, you lions get a look that makes you wish you were back home eating stale granola bars and watching history documentaries instead of living in one. Yes, that's what they call it. Not main course or platter. Just the meat mountain, and it lives up to its name. You open it carefully, and inside is a mix of chopped heart, kidney, and probably lung, stewed together. The pouch was cooked in boiling water and sealed with a thread of intestines. Basically, someone places a slippery lump of sheep tail fat in the palm of their hand and tries to toss it into someone else's mouth across the circle. This is met with mixed success and lots of delighted yelling. You nearly get hit in the eye by one. It bounces off your cheek, lands in your lap, and the room erupts in laughter. Congratulations, you've been officially initiated, only if things got desperate, but mostly, they stuck with sheep, goat, yak, and the occasional wild animal unlucky enough to wander too close. The elders pick at them, slowly, precisely. Someone throws a knuckle bone into the fire. You ask why. There's even a debate about whether they regularly consumed marmot, especially roasted. The risk of bubonic plague, apparently not much of a deterrent. You didn't think you'd eat something sewn shut tonight. But here we are. Literally your hand. You look confused. She shrugs. Before water skin, we use this. You sip from your hand. It feels prehistoric, comforting. Somehow. Not the way you're used to fork. Sip. Dab your lips, but a ritualistic pulse. Carve. Chew. Joke. Sing. Drink. Repeat. You're sleepy, stuffed, and vaguely greasy in every possible place, but it's not over. Sure, there's been airag, and plenty of it, but the kind of drunkenness you expect at a feast just isn't here. Mongols drank to warm the blood, not dull the senses. Warriors needed clarity. Even at a feast, tomorrow's battle was never far from mind. Silence isn't awkward. Sometimes, whole minutes pass with everyone chewing, eyes lowered, only the crackle of fire and the slap of meat on the cutting board breaking the hush. It feels ancient, like you're tapping into something that's been happening this way for 1,000 years. Because it has. Everyone claps softly, not because the meat is gone, but because he didn't waste a scrap. No one's worried about being refined. Manners here are about respect, not etiquette. You eat with your blade. You pour the elder's drink before your own. You don't cut in line for the liver, carried on a wooden board the size of a small door. This monument to protein glory is piled high with boiled limbs, ribs, thick strips of flank, and while some parts you decide not to identify too closely, you take it because saying no would be rude and give it a try. The marrow is fatty, rich, and so intensely caloric that you can feel it jump-starting your blood sugar like a horse kick to the chest. It's actually not bad. You smile. He nods, satisfied. The board is set down in the center of the circle with reverence. This is the true test. Because unlike earlier, where food was passed out in semi-orderly chunks, the meat mountain is communal. Fun fact, the Mongols believed different parts of an animal carried different powers. Legend says he believed in unity over luxury, so feasts were rarely opulent, but always abundant. Plenty of food, little pomp, no gold plates, no dainty courses. Just you, your knife, and a feast that could feed an army. On one hand, the Mongols were deeply spiritual, believing in sky gods and ancestral spirits. On the other, they were on horseback all the time, conquering empires and living out of tents. A lot of their culinary traditions may have just been efficient survival strategies that accidentally became sacred. The liver was thought to grant strength, the heart loyalty, the testicles. Well, you can guess. You just hold the chunk in your hand and carve each bite with your knife. The meat is tender but stringy, and somewhere inside it is a small, rubbery surprise. You chew, and chew, and chew. So, when you reach for a thick, Gelatinous piece near the top of the pile. A nearby man quietly points you elsewhere. Leave that for someone stronger, he says. You nod and pick a rib instead. Good call. Now here's the real kicker. You don't have a plate. Historians still argue whether Mongol feasting culture was primarily ritual or purely utilitarian. You get handed something wrapped in stomach lining a pouch, essentially. It's hot to the touch and smells like iron. A warrior across the circle grins at you, biting clean through a femur and sucking the marrow straight out. He offers it next. One fringe Mongol custom you witness is called the fat game. There's also a rhythm to this. Another odd thing, you think of Genghis Khan himself, seated on sheepskin, carving from a meat mountain thus like this, deciding the fate of empires between bites of boiled camel. One scholarly curiosity, Mongols had very few food-related taboos. Pork, fine, dog, sometimes, horse. By the time your fingers are too slick to hold the knife properly, the meat mountain is noticeably shorter. A few bones stick up like shipwrecks in gravy. To let the spirits know we're done, someone murmurs, it's not quite an answer, but it works. One of the older women walks over with a small wooden ladle and pours warm broth into your palm. Everyone begins leaning back now. The circle widens. Bellies protrude. A boy barely 10 walks up with a dagger almost as long as his arm and carves the last piece of meat from the board. And there it is, the quiet ethos of Mongol feasting. Nothing wasted. No piece too small. Everything consumed, honored, used. You look around and realize something odd. No one's drunk. You lean back on your elbows, the warmth of the fire settling into your skin. You survive the meat mountain. Barely. But just when you think it's time for rest, someone taps your shoulder and hands you a carved bowl. Horse stew. Next round. You cradle the bowl carefully. Its wood warm from whatever stew is inside. The rim smooth and slightly oily to the touch. A few flecks of meat and fat cling to the edges like warning signs. You lean in to smell it. Oh, it's horse. The scent is strong gamey. A little sweet. Like beef left too long in the sun and then brought back to life by a generous ladle of garlic and boiled onions. Transportation, warmth, milk, even musical inspiration. Some of the instruments you heard earlier were strung with horsehair. And yes, when needed, dinner. Not because they disrespected their horses, but because they honored them completely. No part went to waste. A dead horse wasn't abandoned, it was absorbed. You hesitate for just a moment, because there's something sacred about eating an animal that might have shared your tent yesterday. But in the Mongol world, the horse is everything. The broth is rich, made with marrow, fat, and a splash of arag to cut the gaminess. For the strong, he says. You nod back. Mongol warriors, especially seasoned ones, had a habit of slicing off meat with their blades and placing it directly between their teeth like some primal conveyor belt. You're encouraged to try it. Carefully, you fumble, your knife slipping slightly, and everyone chuckles. It's fine. You're new. At this point, your stomach has given up filing complaints. A seasoned warrior could strip a rib to the bone in 6 swift slices, all without once putting the blade down. One quirky tidbit. Knives were often passed down through generations, not polished, not even cleaned too much, because the blade remembered the hands of its previous owners. A sort of edible legacy. Somewhere in there, you swear you taste dried wild onion. People start to lean closer to one another. The outer circle of warriors stretches out their legs. The game is simple. Who can drink the most without spilling? It's oddly effective. And definitely better than the traditional step face wash. Snow rubbed directly on the cheeks until circulation returns, or you pass out. They gulp in silence. The second man wins and raises his bowl to the sky. Everyone claps once. You spot a few on the side table now. They rock hard and vaguely resemble goats. You pocket one, for good luck, or dental damage, either way. The loser shrugs, then dumps the rest of his stew into the fire with a small chant. For the ones who ride above, the punchline involves digestive revenge and a very fast horse. The proper response, a joke. Laughter neutralizes the curse. You like that. It's very Mongol, defeat danger with a punchline. You laugh, not because you fully understand it, but because laughter is contagious. Especially here, when bellies are full and no one's actively swinging a saber, no one's sleeping, but everyone is relaxing into that post-meat stupor where your heartbeat slows and your brain starts to drift like smoke. You chew slowly, thoughtfully. It's good. You feel warm, a little slow, like your blood is flowing through syrup. You glance at the fire and realize it's burned low. Just a nest of glowing coals and the occasional crackling spark. Hearty, the kind of food you imagine a man might eat before charging into a blizzard. So, you take a bite. Mongols take it as a sign that the food was good, that the guest is satisfied, that the cook has succeeded. You're told never to step over the fire pit, never to throw bones directly into it unless they're meant for the ancestors. Fire is life, and life is circular, bones into flames, smoke into air, air into sky. That's the cycle, that's the prayer. You try one yourself, it's underwhelming. A weak little bubble of gratitude, the idea being, even in death, the ancestors deserve a sip. Still, the elder woman beside you pats your shoulder in approval. It counts. The meat is soft, fibrous, and unexpectedly sweet. An elder across from you raises his bowl in a lazy toast. It's considered an aggressive act, like challenging them to a duel between mouthfuls. Another rule: don't step over food. Even if it's just a scrap of meat on the ground, you walk around it. Every bite is sacred, even the chewy ones. Now, etiquette. Mongol feasting rules are simple, but absolute. And here's one of the strangest. Never point your knife at someone while eating. In a culture where death could come from weather, war, or a badly judged wolf, respect for resources wasn't just politeness, it was survival instinct dressed in tradition. Historians still argue whether these customs were enforced by religious belief, social code, or plain old superstition. Probably all three. Let's talk about the tooth knife. This wasn't a literal tool, but a cultural habit. And yes, that means most Mongols had spectacular knife skills. As the stew courses through your bloodstream like hot embers, the conversation shifts. Fewer stories, more quiet murmurs. Suddenly, someone burps, loudly. This is not rude, quite the opposite. One young man challenges another to a duel not with swords, but with broth bowls. Another offering. And speaking of fire, it's central to everything. Not just physically, but spiritually. You notice a few warriors are using the steam from the stew to clean their faces, holding the bowl close, letting the vapor soften their skin before wiping it with a cloth. Here's a fun fringe tidbit. During longer feasts, some Mongol hosts would offer guests small tokens made of dried curds shaped like animals or weapons as both snacks and lucky charms. Someone tells a joke about a Khitan trader who tried to sell spiced camel dung as a delicacy to a Mongol camp. Then, a moment of tension, a warrior across the circle drops his knife into his bowl. It splashes loudly, the room quiets, everyone stares, you freeze. But then, an older man speaks a line you can't quite catch. Laughter follows. The warrior retrieves his knife sheepishly, crisis averted. Later, you learn this is an omen. Dropping your knife into food means you being challenged by an unseen spirit, may be a reminder, maybe a warning. By now, the horse stew has settled deep into your limbs. One of the elders scoops a final ladle of stew into a carved horn and places it beside the fire. For the ones who rode with thunder, he says. No one speaks after that, and without ceremony. The stew course is done. You set your bowl down gently, wipe your hands on your sash, and lean back. For now, it's time to eat on the move. The wind cuts harder now. Not a blizzard, not yet, but the kind of cold that wraps around your ankles like a cat made of ice. The fire behind you crackles quietly, but your bowl is empty. Your hands are numb, and a man just handed you a piece of horse meat wrapped in cloth, nodding toward the horizon. More often than not, it happened on the move because Mongols were always moving. And when they weren't, they were about to? War, migration, Diplomacy, raiding, hurting. If you stood still too long on the steppe, the wind would carry you off like a dried leaf. Time to go. See, feasting in the Mongol world wasn't always a cozy, sit-down affair. So here you are, riding east with a pouch of dried meat bumping against your hip, the scent of broth still clinging to your sleeves, and no real idea when your next hot meal will arrive. Meat, usually beef or mutton, is sliced thin, hung to dry in the open air, then crumbled into bits and stored in bags made of stomach or skin. It lasts for months. Add hot water, and boom, instant stew. But that's the beauty of it. Mongol feasts weren't tied to palaces or holidays. In fact, their entire military dominance was built around moving fast, eating whatever was on hand, and never getting sentimental about luxuries like cutlery or indoor plumbing. Known as arl, they're rock-hard nuggets made from fermented milk, dried to the consistency of bone, and best consumed by sucking slowly. Some say yes, pointing to evidence of organized hunting parties, dried meat reserves, and preserved dairy stores. Others argue they simply lived off the land and looted what they needed, like a culinary tornado. No, it wasn't a daily smoothie. It was survival in liquid form, nutrient-rich, easy to digest, and weirdly effective at keeping fatigue at bay. You hear stories of warriors nicking a vein in their horse's neck, collecting the blood, then sealing the wound with mud and hair. Both horse and rider live to tell the tale. He slices off a section with his knife and hands you a piece. Kidney, he says. Or maybe lung. You don't ask, you chew. The Mongol genius wasn't in inventing food, it was in adapting to it. He offers you some. It tastes like trail mix filtered through a yak. Still, it's better than cold kidneys. They didn't need taverns or bakeries. They needed wine, a knife, and the stomach to eat whatever wouldn't kill them first. Meat is unpacked, some still wrapped in hide, some simply dangling from hooks tied to horse saddles. Chewing is optional and a dental hazard, but when you're on the march, these sour little stones keep your mouth busy and your stomach from staging a mutiny. They follow the people, saddle up, and dinner comes too. But to steady breath, to align spirits. One song rises into the dark, deep and humming, throat singing, again. Somewhere, someone claps along with the rhythm of hoof beats, but it gets the job done. Let's talk about that dried meat. Maybe because you earned it. Maybe because it's hot. Maybe because your lips are too numb to complain. Rabbit, he says, proudly, you take it. It's overcooked, crunchy at the edges, but it's food, and it's offered with pride. You eat. It's called borts, and it's one of the most practical culinary inventions you've ever tasted, with chapped lips and shaky hands. Someone passes you a boiled dumpling, booze, doughy, meaty, piping hot. It was tucked in an armpit for warmth. You try not to think too hard about that. Sound familiar? It should. Borts was the medieval world's cup noodles, portable, easy to prep, and strangely satisfying after a 10-hour ride in sub-zero weather. Portable steamers made of stacked iron or ceramic were used when time allowed. You could boil meat in a pot slung beneath your horse's belly, or heat broth in a metal bowl balanced on stones, shielded from wind by your own fur cloak. You try some now, dry, not rehydrated. It's salty and fibrous and feels like chewing on a boot that once loved you deeply. Another clever Mongol trick, milk pellets. Not about the cold, not about the miles, not about the fact that breakfast was shared with 50 people and a bowl that may have doubled as someone's helmet. As your horse plods forward, you notice something odd. No one complains. Mongols didn't whine about logistics. They were logistics. You stop briefly to rest the horses, and someone unrolls a strip of boiled organ meat from a pouch. It's wrapped in cloth like a scroll. Historians still argue whether Mongol armies had structured supply chains like European forces. Both are probably true. A quirky tidbit: Genghis Khan was known to drink a broth made from horse blood mixed with milk during long rides. You wonder what it must have been like to ride into China or Persia or Hungary on that diet. No vineyards, no banquets, Just leather sacks of meat dust and a belief that the sky god had your back. You reach a ridge where the steppe rolls out endlessly ahead, golden grass, shadowed hills, the outline of gears pitched far off in the distance like scattered dice. It's delicious. Mongols weren't above enjoying a warm meal on the go. Everything doubled as a kitchen, if you were clever. One man heats dried cheese near the fire until it softens, then rolls it in dried berries and salt. When the group finally halts for the night, camp is assembled with choreographed efficiency. Dares rise like mushrooms after rain. Fires are lit using dried dung and flint. You're handed a pot and told to stir the stew made from today's dried meat. A fistful of wild onions, and a broth so fatty it leaves a ring on your sleeve if it splashes. And just as you start to relax, you hear singing. Even on the march, they sing. Not to pass time, not to entertain. You sip your stew. It tastes better than anything you had seated by the fire earlier. A child hands you a strip of meat on a stick and grins. Later, you lie beneath the stars, belly full, head heavy. The wind hushes slightly, fires burn low. Feasting, you realize, isn't about the location. It's about the people, the rhythm, the endless dance of hunger and hospitality. And tomorrow, you'll do it all again. The first thing you notice is the silence. Not the absence of sound, there's still the dull jangle of harnesses, the crunch of boots on frosted grass, and somewhere a man clearing his throat like he is trying to win an argument with his own lungs, but a different kind of quiet. A calm before a different kind of storm. You've arrived at a city, what's left of it. Anyway, bits of brick and bone crunch underfoot. The fire burns lower than usual, not out of humility, but because there's still smoke rising from the homes beyond. Stone walls cracked, gates splintered, smoke trailing like a thread across the morning sky. The Mongol horde has conquered this place, and tonight, the feast begins not on the steppe, but on its ashes. You're not in a ger anymore. Tonight, the table is a saddle blanket laid across scorched earth. You don't ask, you sip. It's rich, salty, and tastes faintly of charcoal and ash. Fitting. Mongols didn't just feast after victories, they feasted during them. While cities burned, warriors sharpened their blades with greasy fingers. While emissaries begged for mercy, ribs were passed around like victory medals. And tonight, you sit cross-legged in the middle of it all. The mood is victorious. Yes, but focused. Meat is rationed evenly. There's evidence for both. A feast could be a celebration, a strategy, or a warning. Sometimes all three. Arag is passed around, but no one gets drunk. Someone tells you it's crane. Someone else says pigeon. You decide to just enjoy the crunch. Nearby, a man bites into something with a loud snap, and a sliver of bone flies into the fire. He doesn't flinch. You notice that blades are still close at hand, laid neatly beside each warrior, not in a hostile way, but in a quiet, constant readiness. You're handed a bowl, they devoured it, adapted it, and made it mobile. These songs are slower, steadier, they rise from deep in the chest like smoke from the fire, low and wide and sorrowful. War songs, but not about glory. Songs about missing brothers, horses lost in rivers, wives left behind. In fact, some of their best feasts included foreign spices, looted wines, and new recipes picked up during conquest. You hesitate, then gently touch the blade to your bowl's rim. The vibration hums in your fingertips. You sip. It's surprisingly fragrant. You take a cautious bite. It's rich, complex. The outside crisps against your teeth. The inside bursts with fat and flavor. You're told their comrade fell in the siege that morning. The wooden horse is for him, placed by the fire, facing east. Food is set before it. Sky burials, fire offerings, horse effigies. Death was handled with a combination of practicality and reverence. And food always played a part, a cup of arag beside it. No one touches that offering, but also garlic, fat, and that strange foreign spice again. Life and death, conquest and comfort, swirling together in one giant pot. Another laughs and says he'll trade his gold ring for another dumpling. Someone else offers a boiled tongue in exchange. It's both serious and not. Mongols were nothing if not practical economists. You could measure wealth in meat. Trade it, store it, use it to buy allegiance. It's not boastful. Just matter of fact, as if he's describing a hunt. You wonder how many times he's done this. They supplemented it with horse blood and airag, borts and fat. But when a city fell, they feasted, not in indulgence, but to mark the shift. The moment the battle ended, and something else, something older began. How many cities he's eaten in. The meat sweats are real. So is the ache in your thighs. And yet, you feel steady, like the feast has anchored you, even here, in the ruins of someone else's home. One captured Persian cook, legend says, introduced saffron into a Mongol general's broth. He was spared, promoted, even, a blade is passed around not to use, but to tap against bowls. A clink, a murmur, then a drink. It's symbolic. The idea being, while the meat fills your belly, don't let your edge grow dull. It's full of stew, probably goat, possibly dog. Maybe something that once answered to merchant. Fun fact, when Mongols captured cities, they didn't destroy everything. They kept the useful bits: blacksmiths, scribes, cooks. Tonight, the stew has something different in it: cardamom, maybe, a trace of cumin. It's warming, exotic. A conquered flavor, adopted fast. Mongols were like that. If something worked, food, fabric, philosophy, they didn't reject it. But make no mistake, this isn't a lavish banquet. There are no goblets of wine, no overflowing platters. Historians still argue whether Mongol feasting on campaign was primarily tactical, meant to sustain morale, or ritualistic, tied older shamanistic traditions. You pick at a roasted bird leg, small, crisped at the edges. Then come the songs, but they're different tonight. Gone is the rowdy chorus of throat singing and drunk laughter. The youngest warriors sing the loudest, the oldest don't sing at all. One quirky ritual unfolds, the sharpening toast. You're asked to tap next. Someone across the circle begins retelling the conquest, how the walls fell, how the defenders broke. And then, as if summoned by your thoughts, a new dish is placed before you. Roasted intestines, coiled like a sleeping snake, stuffed with spiced offal and something bread-like. Turns out, a good conquest can improve dinner. But not everything is celebratory. At the edge of the gathering, a group of warriors sit apart. Their heads are lowered. One holds a small carved horse in his lap. Later, it will be burned, the smoke carrying the spirit home. Mongols didn't do graves in the way you'd expect. You notice a subtle shift in the air. The wine carries the scent of blood, iron, ash. You take another bite. Not because you're hungry, but because chewing gives your hands something to do. Something that isn't holding a weapon, or a memory. Someone jokes about the loot being too heavy. A historical note, during campaigns, Mongol warriors could survive on as little as one meal a day. You lie back slightly now, the fire crackling at your side. As the stars burn overhead, you sip one last mouthful of hot broth. And you realize, to feast on the march is not to forget the world's pain. It's to acknowledge it, to sing through it, to eat despite it. Because tomorrow, you ride again. The morning breaks like ice across the steppe, blue light bleeding into a brittle sky, and you already awake, your breath hanging in front of your face like a ghost that hasn't decided whether to haunt you or not. You're not alone. The camp is stirring. But today is different. Today, there's a celebration, not a conquest, not a hunt, not a funeral pyre still smoking in the distance today, a wedding. A Mongol wedding isn't something you witness so much as something you get pulled into, like a whirlpool made of goats, music, and competitive eating. And yes, there's going to be feasting. A lot of it. The groom looks about 15, but already sports a mustache that's more aspiration than achievement. They don't speak much because Mongol weddings aren't about the couple, they're about the clan. You sip cautiously, it's shubat, fermented camel's milk, a bit tangier than air egg and 3 times more aggressive on the tongue. It tastes like sour yogurt got into a bar fight with vinegar. You keep sipping. The bride is young. She wears her hair in 2 thick braids wrapped in silver. The sheep's head is offered to the most honored guest today. That's the bride's grandfather, who accepts it with both hands. He lifts it, turns it toward the sun, murmurs something about unity and ancestors, then slices off the ears and gives them to the children. Repeat. The air smells like smoke and sweat and cumin. The knife work begins. Strip meat. Bite. Chew. Joke. Someone splashes more shubat into your bowl. You thank them through clenched teeth, a symbolic gesture. The kids must listen well in their new family roles. And clans feast loudly. You're handed a bowl before you've even sat down. It's brimming with something warm, milky, and flecked with floating fat. It is not water. You crack the lid open, and steam bursts out like a genie having a panic attack. The meat inside is fall-apart tender, infused with the flavor of scorched rock and rendered fat. Worth it. You burn your fingers trying to pick a piece. Women clap in double rhythms. Men stand and shout names of ancestors. Somewhere, a man starts juggling knives while reciting a love poem about a woman whose smile was as sharp as horse teeth. Guests were expected to contribute cooking, storytelling, entertainment, or at the very least, not passing out in the broth. You accept the drink. It's sweet, floral, and deeply calming. You nod politely as the woman explains how she once fed 50 warriors with nothing but to sheep and a prayer. She's probably exaggerating. Or not. They offer it to every elder, one by one, in a gesture of humility and service. When they reach you, the groom hesitates, then smiles. Probably made with fermented mare's milk and wild herbs. You feel it settle behind your eyes like a warm hand. Women sing while stirring cauldrons the size of bathtubs. You watched old women roll for knuckle bones onto a hide mat. They peer at the results and cackle. Apparently, someone's in for a lot of sons. Or goats. Or goat-like sons. It's hard to say. You take a sip. Your nose shuts down. Your eyes tear up. Your throat goes through all 5 stages of grief. It feels like family, like home. Like the wind outside is just a lullaby waiting to carry the next song into the night. The head points east. The heart is placed at the center. Liver and kidneys fin out like petals. You're told this is no accident. There's meaning here. A kind of edible cosmology. A piece of meat is placed on the coals not to cook, but to honor. An offering to the spirits, asking for unity, fertility, protection. Most agree that while marriage alliances were crucial, especially among noble families, the actual celebrations ranged from minimalist to borderline chaotic. Children run between fires, carrying pots, knives, and at one point, a still steaming sheep's head with the kind of focus usually reserved for carrying royal babies. Today's meal is more than food, it's performance. Men compete to see who can carve meat fastest. Historians still argue whether Mongol wedding feasts followed a strict ritual or were glorified potlucks with social pressure. You, today, are in chaos territory. You re-beckon into a circle where elders sit in a semi-formal huddle around a central platter, boiled sheep, cut into parts and arranged symbolically. Then comes the head gesture. You've seen this once before, but now it's more ceremonial. You're handed a rib. You lose count. You lose feeling in your knees, but your belly is so happy it hums. It's greasy, slightly undercooked, and delicious. Here's a quirky tidbit. During wedding feasts, some Mongols used boiled sheep ankle bones not just as food, but as dice for fortune-telling. The meat keeps coming. Someone brings korkhogger Mongol barbecue made by stuffing meat, onions, and hot stones into a metal container, then sealing it over a fire. More bowls arrive, one with stewed tripe, another with flattened dumplings. Suddenly, someone taps your shoulder and hands you a horn, a real one, polished, curved, and filled with liquid so clear it might be water. It's Mongol vodka called arki, distilled from fermented milk and likely able to remove paint from walls. But everyone cheers. You survive the sip. You're now part of the feast, and the singing begins again. This time, it's celebratory, faster, louder, with drums that seem to come from nowhere. Someone toasts the Khan, another toasts the sky. Someone else toasts the goats. You don't question it? Fun fact, Mongol wedding feasts often lasted several days. And while the food never ran out, neither did the responsibilities. You carve meat, you pour drinks, then, a moment of stillness. The bride and groom walk around the circle. Each holds a small cup. Then, they kneel together before the fire. The flames crackle, smoke rises, everyone watches in silence. And for a brief moment, this wedding feast doesn't feel like history. You lie back, hands on your full belly, the stars spinning slowly overhead. And somewhere in the darkness, someone calls for more dumplings. Of course they do. The stars haven't faded yet, but the camp is already breaking down. Dares are being folded like heavy origami, horses saddled with sleepy precision, and last night's bones buried or burned. You stretch, stiff from sleep and salt, the taste of dumplings still clinging to your molars, but don't get too comfortable. A Kurultai is a grand council, part parliament, part military rally, part festival, and yes, part massive, meat-soaked, earth-shaking feast. When the Mongols wanted to crown a new Khan, declare war, or settle internal disputes, they didn't do it with parchment and quills. They did it on horseback, over 100 fires, with enough food to feed a nation of wolves. You're headed to a Kurultai. This, you learn, is no ordinary gathering, and you're invited. Sort of. The air smells like mutton, sweat, dung, and power. You rehear, because someone shoved a smoked goat leg into your hand and pointed you toward the horizon, a formal invitation, Mongol style. The bread is chewy, warm, slightly smoky from being cooked on an overturned shield. You take a bite, perfection. You're handed a bowl automatically, without question, because here, food is protocol. If you're under a Mongol sky, you don't starve. Ankle bones are everywhere again, tossed, flicked, spun like dice. Two men clasp hands over a shared rib bone, tear it in half, and then each eats their piece in silence. Around it, fires burn hotter, and the food is richer. Large iron pots bubble with bantan, a meaty flour soup that's part hangover cure, part military fuel. You try a sip, it coats your mouth like warm gravy, and then somehow tightens your scalp. You don't know how, but it does. It sticks to your teeth like a warning. You try not to grimace. It's a vow unbreakable, at least until dessert. You're invited to participate. Your partner is a thick-necked archer with 6 rings on one hand and an expression like he has smelled something confusing. If consensus is clear, the new Khan is lifted onto a felt mat by 4 elders and paraded around the fire. If it's not clear, well, let's just say it becomes a long night. Today, the arms go up fast. You bite into one and nearly drop it. It's that hot and flavorful, crisp on the outside, juicy inside, with just a hint of spice. The cheers are loud. The felt mat rises, chewy, he says. But it teaches patience. You're not sure if that's culinary advice or life wisdom, but either way, you nod. You accept. The bone splits cleanly. You chew. He nods. Someone begins a long, winding story involving a cursed sheep, a haunted stew pot, and a general who married a spirit disguised as a yak. The children gather close. The adults pretend not to listen, but lean in anyway. It's thick, savory, and soothing. You sip. The stars return. You are now technically allies in all things, including possible vengeance and, apparently, goat herding rights. Someone's carved a tiny goat out of curd and is using it as a game piece. Another man is balancing a boiled egg on a knife tip. It lasts 6 seconds, applause all around. You sip. It's broth, thin, spicy, and laced with fat. Perfect. By mid-morning, you crest a hill and see it. Hundreds, maybe thousands of tents arranged like a giant's checkerboard. Smoke spiraling into the sky from every direction. This is what democracy looks like when everyone carries a bow. Others point out that it usually ended with everyone agreeing with whichever general had the most archers behind him. His words are bold. rhythmic, and occasionally punctuated by bites of meat or slurps of broth. Food had to be sourced for thousands, animals gathered and butchered, water located, fires fueled, and yet, these enormous assemblies came together with almost no infrastructure. Just instinct, tradition, and a bone-deep respect for order masked in chaos. You understand none of it, but the cadence carries meaning. Strength, loyalty, maybe the price of an action. Every few lines, the crowd grunts in approval. And always, someone is carving something. The food here is different, more refined, if that's the word. Roasted meats brushed with honey, wild onions charred over coals, dumplings with delicate pleats, steamed in stacked pots that whistle like tea kettles. Still, it was far more consultative than most European courts at the time. You make your way into the outer ring, past guards draped in sable and iron, past herders roasting entire carcasses on spits the size of oars. Historians still argue whether the Kuriltai was truly democratic. Some say yes, it required consensus, allowed for debate, and even gave voice to lesser nobles. You're ushered toward a central fire ring, where dignitaries sit on felt cushions, knives tucked into their belts, silver cups in hand. Someone hands you a piece of roast lamb wrapped in flatbread, and then someone throws a bone at you. Not in anger, this is a game. Mongols loved turning feasting into sport. A quirky tradition unfolds nearby, the meat oath. You glance toward the high tent where the future Khan will soon sit, if the vote goes through. There's a drumbeat rising now. Someone stands to speak, likely a chieftain, and everyone quiets. Fun fact, at the height of the Mongol Empire, Kuriltai were logistical miracles. Your own food arrives in waves. Smoked fish, dried curd, pickled onions stored in leather sacks, and a strange, chewy candy made from boiled milk and root syrup. Then, the vote. It happens not with paper or ceremony, but with raised arms and shouted names. And the feasting doubles. New pots are opened, revealing delicacies reserved for special moments: cowhead stews, peppered goat ribs, and kushur deep-fried meat pies that sizzle even after being served. You sit beside a boy no older than 10 who is sharpening his own knife with a river stone and explaining the virtues of boiled horse tongue. As the sun dips, the fires glow brighter, the drums louder, and there it is again, that rhythm of Mongol life. Ride, feast, listen, ride again. You lean back, your belly a tight drum. Someone passes you one last bowl of tea laced with yak butter, and around you, 1,000 fires burn like constellations across the earth. The feast has ended, but the taste lingers, fat on your lips, salt on your tongue, the strange floral smoke of tea and firewood still curling through your clothes like invisible embroidery. You sleep under the open sky, lulled by the murmurs of 1,000 warriors dreaming beside crackling embers. By dawn, the Kuriltai is gone, packed up, vanished, as if the steppe absorbed it in a single breath. You rise to find your horse saddled, your pouch mysteriously refilled with dried curd, and an old man handing you a strip of something that smells like burnt honey and boiled vinegar. Take it, he says. It's for strength. You take it. You chew. Yaks, carts, children, traders in robes of silk and felt, and somewhere in the middle, food. Always food. Baskets of dried fish, gourds filled with sour yogurt, strings of dried intestine tied like festive garlands from pole to pole. It sports a Mongol fried dough, crisp on the outside, soft in the middle, often eaten for breakfast or stuffed in a pouch for later. It's not quite sweet, not quite savory. Just dough, oil, and resolve, the perfect travel food. If it bites back, she says, you know it's fresh. A meal begins not as celebration, not even as rest, but as ritual. You're headed west now, riding with a caravan that looks like it fell straight out of an ancient mural. The stones hiss and pop, turning the broth cloudy and rich. He removes them with tongs made of bone and sets them aside to cool, and so on, back into the wind, back into the earth. Then he eats in silence, crouched, head low, hands steady. This is the other side of Mongol feasting, the long, slow eating of the road. No songs here, just chewing. A woman beside you offers a bite of her hard cheese. It tastes like regret and chalk. You nod anyway. No diplomacy, no history. And here, on the road, you see just how much effort goes into feeding an empire. Historians still argue whether the traveling caravans were mere support systems or the beating heart of the Mongol Empire. After all, without food, there's no conquest. Someone passes yurts aganidi, the white food. After cooking, the hot stones now cool are passed around. Each person holds one for a moment, rubbing it between their palms like a prayer. In gratitude, the fox led him to a field where the grass sang and the milk never curdled. A way of carrying home inside your body, one bite at a time. The moral is unclear, but the story stays with you. You smell spices: cinnamon, cardamom, black pepper, and something fried. You follow your nose. It's said to absorb the strength of the meal, the warmth of the fire, the bond of the company. It's a catch-all term for dairy-based staples: curd, yogurt, dried cheese, butter, milk liquor, and more. Not in the hipster cafe sense, but in the ancient, borderless, empire-spanning sense. Mongol tastes weren't limited to the steppe. As they conquered and traded, they absorbed culinary ideas like they absorbed languages and tactics pragmatically, hungrily. A collective exhale, the kind that happens when everyone's belly is full and no one wants to be the first to stand. You lie back on a patch of thawing grass, chewing the last bit of curd. The sky so wide it feels like it might fall on you if you blink too hard. The philosophy behind it is surprisingly deep. White foods are pure, sacred, life-giving. Suspended between worlds, between goat curd and garlic dumplings, between conquest and comfort, they're what the herders trust, what they offer to the gods, what they give to travelers and children first. You sip some fermented milk and try not to wince. It's fizzy, sour, and almost tastes alive. Your companion grins. You continue west. At noon, the caravan stops near a frozen river, and fires spark up quickly. Meat is unpacked. Stones are heated. You watch a herder boil a stew using heated stones dropped into a leather bag filled with water, fat, and hunks of lamb. You join him. And somewhere between the rhythm of hoof beats and the weight of your food pouch, you begin to understand something. The stew is incredible. You wonder how many times he's made this. How many times his father did, and his grandfather. A quirky tradition unfolds beside you. Stone rubbing. You try it. The stone is smooth and faintly greasy. It fits perfectly in your hand. Later, a boy throws one into the river, just to see how far it'll skip. It sinks immediately. He shrugs and walks away. Lunch ends not with a toast, but with a silence. Someone starts a story. It's about a traveler who fed a hungry fox, only to discover the fox was a spirit in disguise. Then the herd moves. Carts creak. Children shout. Goats refuse direction. You remount and follow. Feasting in Mongol culture is confined to fire circles and victory chants. It's portable, internal. Later that night, the caravan stops near an outpost where Chinese and Persian traders exchange goods under the gaze of Mongol sentries. A merchant offers you a skewer, grilled lamb, peppered and brushed with a glaze you can't place. Sweet, tangy, strange. You take a bite. It's fusion food. That's how you end up eating lamb spiced with Persian herbs, sipping Tibetan tea laced with butter, and finishing the meal with Chinese steamed buns stuffed with minced yak. All in one dinner. You lean back against a cart, watching smoke trail into stars, and for a moment, you feel timeless. Between the steppe and everywhere else, you wake to the scent of ginger and bone marrow. Someone's already boiling soup over a quiet flame, the broth golden and swirling, steam lifting into the crisp dawn like a silk ribbon torn from the earth. You sit up slowly, your back stiff from sleeping under a cart, your hands still dusted with crumbs of last night's fusion feast. You stretch, crack your knuckles, and accept the bowl that's silently offered to you. It's light, delicate, almost gentle. This isn't a warrior's meal. It's something else entirely. You've arrived at the court. Think less gold and marble, more silk and smoke. No towering pillars, but tall gear tents stitched from the hides of 100 animals, lined in brocade and fur, and guarded by men who measure worth by how cleanly they can slice a watermelon mid-gallop. Not a palace exactly, but the nomadic, mobile version of one. Eyes flick toward you every time you lift your spoon. You scoop it with a wooden spoon, trying not to slurp too loudly, at least for the meal. You notice seasoned warriors taking dainty, deliberate bites like their future depends on it. Because sometimes, it does. A nearby official raises an approving brow. You feel like you just passed a test. Its ribs are fanned open, steaming. Its head rests atop a small mound of greens and curd. You're not sure if that's for garnish or symbolism. A raised eyebrow follows every hesitation. Even your chewing seems under surveillance. After all, as the empire grew, so did the bureaucracy and, with it, the dining expectations. Food isn't just food anymore. It's diplomacy, performance, calculation. You chew through the conversations as much as the meat. He hands it to the Khan, a gesture of respect. Then, the left hind leg to the oldest general, the liver to the eldest female present. These are not just favors, they are messages. And every bite you take says something about your rank, your role, your reliability. The Khan nods once, then gestures for it to be served, a taste you weren't expecting. A taste you might want again. You sip it tentatively. It's like drinking sour oatmeal through a straw. Not unpleasant, just persistent. A third about the quality of Persian dates compared to the new batch from Samarkand. Politics and produce, mingled without pause. A bowl of them is set before a general, with a face like a granite mountain. You chew slowly, feeling the texture shift from outer bark to buttery muscle. Recipes evolved. A stew tasted one way in Bukhara, another in Karakoram, and yet another when adapted for the court. It's calming, sweet, a soft close to a sharp-edged day, dessert, rare, and deliberate. Each guest receives exactly one. You eat yours slowly, careful not to drop a crumb. Just a nod, a breath, and the meal ends. Advisors return to their tents, some muttering, some laughing, some with bellies full, but eyes still hungry. Across the tent, a scribe is already writing something down, likely a summary of today's interactions, coded through who ate what and when. Feasting was a cultural exchange disguised as lunch. There's silence around you now, the quiet clinking of knives on bone, the occasional cough. He offers one to the envoy beside him. It's a signal, peace, perhaps. Or, at least, digestion before discussion. This was something else. A theater of food. A strategy of spoons. A battle without blood. Here, you witness Mongol feasting at its most political. Nobles sit on raised felt cushions, each with a servant at their back, a curved knife in hand, and a bowl that's never empty for long. You're seated near the edge of a central tent. Not with nobles, but close enough to see how the sausage is made literally and metaphorically. You catch the scent of booze-steamed dumplings filled with minced lamb and onion. Historians still argue whether court feasting was a continuation of battlefield camaraderie or a reflection of newly adopted sedentary customs. Here, you don't just eat, you perform the act of eating. You're served bantan, again thicker this time, almost a paste, made with hand-crushed flour and rich, fatty broth. A quirky rule, at the highest levels, talking with a full mouth is not just rude as a faux pas that could get you booted from a political alliance. Then the centerpiece arrives, an entire sheep roasted whole and carried in on a wooden plank shaped like a crescent moon. A senior advisor stands, lifts his curved knife, and slices the right foreleg. Every piece of this sheep tells a story. You're given a shoulder slice. It's tender, smoky, with a crisp edge that cracks slightly under your teeth. Then, the debates begin, softly at first, like waves gathering. Discussing taxes, tribute routes, a rogue son of a general in the east. An envoy from China presents a gift, salted fish wrapped in silk, preserved with dried orange peel and black vinegar. You try a bite. It's intensely salty, strangely fragrant. In return, the Khan offers horse sausages. Yes, horse, sliced into rounds, spiced with wild herbs, and served chilled. The envoy hesitates, but eats. He smiles. The circle of advisors nods. Diplomacy achieved. A bowl of fermented millet porridge makes the rounds next, something adapted from a conquered region, likely Central Asia. You overhear a conversation about silk tariffs. Another about the need for more sheep in the western pastures. Fun fact, Mongol courts employed cooks from all corners of the empire: Persians, Chinese, Arabs, even captured Frenchmen. A tray arrives with small rice cakes dusted in crushed walnuts and honey. Then, a final drink. You re-handed a silver cup filled with warm Mare's milk and a dash of honey. You drink. The Khan stands. Everyone does. There are no toasts, no grand pronouncements. Outside, the sky has turned amber with twilight. Fires are being rekindled. Horses fed. You walk away from the court, toward your own fire. You've seen war feasts, wedding feasts, roadside feasts, but this, and you survived it. Barely. The night settles in quietly, but the empire never truly sleeps. Somewhere in the dark, guards murmur over boiled tea. Horses shuffle against taut reins, and your own belly gently reminds you that diplomacy might fill the brain, but not the stomach. Thankfully, the campfire near your tent is already popping, and a pot hangs suspended above the coals like an offering to the gods of digestion. You sit down, wrap a worn blanket over your shoulders, and breathe deep. Tonight, it's Sweven. You didn't expect it. Mongol noodle stir-fry, made from scratch, right here on the steppe. There's no garnish, no flair, just comfort. Someone is already kneading dough in a wooden bowl, their hands moving with the calm certainty of a person who's done this 10,000 times. It's then rolled thin, cut into ribbons, and laid over meat and vegetables to steam all together in one pot. You open it carefully. It smells like warmth. Salt, fat, onion, and something slightly sweet, maybe carrot. Or the memory of carrot. You watch, and then you eat. Either way, it's stuck. The noodles are chewy, savory, tangled with slices of beef so tender you could chew them with your eyebrows. Just people who've ridden far, eaten well, and are briefly full and safe. Supplies are being packed: dried cheese, salted meat, and slices of noodle dough pre-dried in the sun. You ask someone how long it lasts. These aren't leftovers. They're offerings for the on-god, ancestral spirits. Some believe these spirits still hover around the fire, listening, watching, maybe even judging your seasoning choices. So, you feed them, just in case. It's about a man who tricked a giant into eating a soup made of rocks. The food here isn't performing, it's restoring. You realize something. It's hearty, soft, like the steppe itself, plain, deep, uncheckable. Another story involves a wolf who teaches a boy to find his way home by following the scent of fried dumplings. These stories always come back to food. Hunger is the root of fear, of wisdom, of memory. Hard, dry pastries shaped like, well, the bottom of a shoe. You nearly break a tooth on the first bite, but then the flavor lands. Butter, flour, and the ghost of cream. It's called arwol. He tosses you a piece. You pop it into your mouth. It's rich, calming, liquid insulation against the chill. Her voice rises just enough to stitch itself into the wind. You don't understand the words, but the feeling is unmistakable. Nostalgia, wistfulness, maybe the memory of someone long gone who once made better soup. Teething rings, please. The steppe builds strong jaws early. It makes your jaw clench like it's seen something awful, and yet, it's oddly satisfying. It'll keep your teeth busy for hours, possibly days. These are ceremonial, often stack during New Year into towering food altars. They feasted to remember who they were when no one else was watching. Tonight, you dip yours in tea and try not to wince. This is what the Mongols eat when they aren't marching, when they aren't scheming, when the Empire exhales. A boy beside you eats silently, then offers you something wrapped in cloth. It's Buvu Shusol cakes. Historians still argue whether dishes like suivan came from Mongol creativity or from absorbed cultures. Some say Chinese prisoners introduced the noodle technique, while others insist Mongol herders invented it while trying to stretch meat rations with flour. And it travels well. Tomorrow, you're heading north toward colder wines and pine-covered hills, until you forget you packed it, they say with a grin. There's laughter tonight, genuine, belly deep, not the forced cheer of a wedding or the stiff silence of the Khan's tent. A quirky tradition unfolds nearby. Someone sets out a small wooden tray with 3 bowls milk, tea, and a scrap of meat. Then comes the story hour. Someone starts a tale old, frayed, passed from tent to tent like a well-traveled boot. You're handed another bowl, this time girl taishul, a flour-thickened soup with lamb and green onions. And suddenly, you're restruck by how different this is from the fire feasting at conquest camps or the tight etiquette of political courts. This is intimacy. The Mongols didn't just feast for power or pride. A herder nearby pulls out a small pouch and unwraps. Wait, is that dried yogurt? It is. Hard as chalk, sour as regret, and meant to be sucked rather than chewed. Fun fact, some Mongol children were teethed on arul. Others were given small, dried meat sticks to gnaw. You're full again now, but somehow, that doesn't stop you from accepting one last bowl of tea, this one flavored with salt and a knob of butter that floats like a lily pad. Nearby, a woman softly sings while scrubbing out a pot with sand and grass. You stretch out beside the fire, blanket pulled high, a belly full of noodles and cheese and smoky broth, and as your eyes drift closed, you wonder, what don't these people turn into a meal? The answer, probably, is nothing, because in a world this vast, where home is always moving and peace is always temporary, the feast is not the reward, it is the home. The wind is different today. It carries fewer campfire scents and more of the bitter cold that whispers through pine and stone. You ride uphill now, away from the steppes' wide open belly and into the jagged ribs of the north, harsher land, harder people, and, naturally, stronger food. You're entering the frontier, the edges of the empire where Mongol outposts cling to rocky slopes and frayed trade routes. These are places that haven't seen a Khan's court in years. But even here, there's feasting stripped down, lean, but proud. A hunk of bone and mutton floats in the water, and you're given a knife to do the honors. You carve, awkwardly, and chew. A feast in the north is a test of endurance. Your arrival is quiet, no songs, no welcoming stew. There's no gold, no flattery, just calories, protein, pride. Just a woman with a fox fur hat squinting at you, then gesturing toward a squat hut where smoke leaks from a roof hole. Either way, the meals here feel ancient, less like dining, more like communion with hunger itself. You duck inside and are hit with a wall of smell meat, leather, damp ash, and something oddly floral. You try not to sneeze. Inside, it's warm, cramped. A handful of warriors and elders sit around a brazier where something thick simmers in a blackened pot. It's laid on a wooden board, sliced thin with surgical precision, and served raw, still cold. You're told this is rare, a special winter delicacy. The flesh is pale pink, silky, and tastes faintly of mineral snow and wood smoke. It hits your throat like winter itself and settles into your stomach like a warm rock. Some even made broth from boiled tree bark when supplies ran low. These are people used to letting food speak for them. A second bowl means welcome. A refill means respect. A piece of liver sliced and placed beside your bowl, that's affection, possibly marriage. You nod and eat carefully. Feasts became puzzles how to create warmth from what little the land allowed. You smile weakly. He slaps your back like you just passed a test. Which you did. It's less drink and more thin porridge. You slurp it with gratitude. The sky is a bruised gray, and the mountains rear up like frozen gods. A girl throws a snowball at your leg. You dodge, barely. It flutters like smoke, then vanishes into the cold, not with music, but with wind. Not with applause, but with a nod, a gesture, a shared drink that scalds and heals. She offers you something in return, a flat, seed-crusted cake she calls winter sun. It's not much. You sit cross-legged on a mat stiff with age and await the verdict. You're handed a bowl of chanas and mac, simply boiled meat. No seasoning, no herbs, no nonsense. It's not tender, it's not juicy, but it's honest. A slab of survival, boiled into submission. This is where feasting turns inward. Frontier dessert, you like it. It has melted down into a small bowl and used to fry thin cuts of meat on the spot. A sizzling, hissing ritual that's both cooking and spectacle. You're offered the first piece. Historians still argue whether frontier outposts retained older, more authentic Mongol cuisine or simply adapted to the limits of their environment. You brace yourself. One elder offers you a sip from his personal flask. It's Tar-Asan distilled from fermented mare's milk. Like Arki, but somehow sharper, clearer. Snow has begun to fall, but inside this tiny shelter, you are warm, full, and safe. 3 words that mean everything out here. Then comes a strange little ceremony. A boy enters, carrying a frozen fish. Yes, frozen, caught from an ice-rimmed stream and preserved by nature. A quirky fact, while Mongols were famous for red meat, frontier outposts often relied on fish, nuts, and foraged roots. Later, someone pulls out a pot of suteit salted milk tea, thickened with toasted millet. You notice something else. There's little talking here. Not out of coldness, but economy. Then someone takes out the fat candle. It's not a candle at all but a hardened hunk of sheep fat with a wick. It's crisp lamb, nearly translucent. It dissolves on your tongue like roasted butter. You make a sound that isn't quite human. Everyone chuckles. Outside, the wind howls. You step outside later, cheeks pink from fire and drink. You take a bite. It's dry, sweet, and slightly oily sunflower seeds, sugar, flour, and rendered fat. The warriors eat quickly now, preparing to ride. But not before one last act, a pinch of flour tossed into the air, offered to the spirits of the mountain. This is how the feast ends in the frontier, not with fullness, but with enough. You pull your coat tighter and mount your horse. Your saddlebag contains dried trout wrapped in birch bark, a strip of fat-fried flatbread, and a chunk of boiled mutton so dense it could be used as currency. But it's everything, because in the Empire's coldest corners, survival is the feast. The cold behind you, the horizon opens again, vast and endless like a canvas waiting for a brushstroke. You find yourself near the bustling trade routes where the Mongol Empire meets the world. Here, food isn't just sustenance. It's currency, language, and a glimpse into countless cultures wrapped into one chaotic marketplace. The air is thick with spices, cumin, coriander, saffron mixed with the unmistakable scent of roasting meat and freshly baked bread. The market hums with voices in dozens of tongues. You can't understand most of them, but the laughter, bargaining, and occasional shout cut through like arrows. You wander past stalls piled high with dried fruits, stacks of round, flat breads, and baskets brimming with nuts. You remember that the word pilaf actually traces back to Persian, but the Mongols carried it westward, adding their own twists. This dish is soft, spicy, and comforting, perfect after a long ride. Someone offers you a sweet pastry filled with walnuts and honey. It's called chak-chak. Everyone eats with their hands, or small wooden spoons, passing bowls and plates around in a practiced dance of generosity and trust. It's said that no deal can be struck without first breaking bread or meat together. Here, the empire tastes itself. The moral, food isn't just life. It's luck, friendship, and sometimes, magic. Nearby, a group of Persian musicians tune their instruments, adding a soundtrack to the feast that feels like the heartbeat of the Silk Road. You take a bite, sticky, crunchy, a little messy, and realize this market feast is a sensory overload you weren't prepared for. Feasting here is a performance of abundance, about sharing stories, spices, and moments that stitch an empire together. You lean back, full, and watch as traders pack up, their laughter mingling with the night breeze. Traders from Persia, China, and the Silk Road bring their delicacies, mingling with Mongol staples to create something rich, varied, and unpredictable. Historians still argue whether these trade hubs influence Mongol food culture more than the army or the courts, but you can see how the answer might be yes. You're offered pilaf, a fragrant rice dish cooked with mutton, carrots, and a generous handful of spices. It tastes like ocean and lightning, sharp and alive. You scrunch your face, but the merchant laughs heartily, saying, "It's an acquired taste." A merchant invites you to try fermented fish sauce, a pungent, fermented liquid used to flavor everything from soups to stews. You hesitate, but take a small sip. These clouds of dough are fluffy and warm, and you grab one greedily. The meat inside is rich, with hints of garlic and black pepper. Nearby, you spot a man cooking mantu steamed buns filled with minced meat. A quirky custom here is the food-sharing circle, where merchants and travelers sit cross-legged around a large tray filled with dozens of small dishes. As you eat, a storyteller weaves a tale about a caravan that survived a desert storm thanks to a mysterious stranger who shared a magical stew. You drink sweetened tea laced with rose petals, the fragrance delicate and calming. The sun begins to set, casting gold over the market tents. Feasting here, in just about filling bellies, it's about connection. You close your eyes, savoring the aftertaste of honey and hope. The market fades behind you as you ride into the rolling grasslands again, the familiar hum of horseshoes pounding earth under your feet. But something feels different, quieter, slower, more intimate. You find yourself in a small family camp, the kind where everyone knows your name, and the only thing more important than food is the stories passed over it. The food isn't extravagant, but it's heartfelt. The fire is low, but the smells are rich: caramelized onions, roasted lamb fat, and fresh flatbread baked on hot stones. You settle down among smiling faces and eager children, grateful for the warmth and welcome. Here, feasting, about home, about survival and celebration wrapped in one. It's less about grand gestures and more about shared moments. You're offered bortsig again, those fried dough pieces you met earlier, but this time dipped in thick, clotted cream. The contrast of crunchy and creamy makes you close your eyes briefly. No one is watching. An elder grumbles good-naturedly, scooping it out and handing it to the boy to eat anyway. Every bite is a prayer, every smile a blessing. "Waste not, want not," she says, eyes twinkling. A woman beside you hands you a bowl of the flour-thickened soup, but this time richer, with chunks of tender meat and fresh herbs from a nearby garden. You sip it slowly, savoring the warmth and quiet kindness. There's laughter as a child accidentally drops a piece of bread into the fire. The clatter of bones on wooden boards mingles with soft singing and the crackling fire. Historians still debate whether Mongol family feasts were primarily practical affairs or sacred rituals, but here, it feels like both. As night deepens, you're invited to join a game of ankle bones, a favorite pastime you've encountered before, but now it feels less competitive, more communal. You grin, remembering the earlier taste test, and accept it like a badge of honor. Someone hands you a small piece of dried arul, that tough yogurt snack that chews like a challenge. The youngest children huddle close. An elder tells a story about a clever fox who stole the feast from a greedy wolf, reminding everyone that sharing is the true heart of any meal. You look around, realizing that for all the empire's size and complexity, it's the simple gathering of family and friends around fire and food that keeps everything whole. You lean back, full and content, watching the stars peek through the thin smoke of the fire. And as sleep pulls you under, you think about the next day's ride, the meals to come, and the story still waiting to be told. Morning light seeps softly into your tent, gentle and slow, like a whispered promise. The world outside feels calm, a vast breath held just for you. Your belly is still, heavy from last night's simple feast sportsig and girl shul, but you welcome the quiet, so many days of roaring fires and clanging swords, of feasts that echoed with power and purpose. You stretch, feeling the weight of the journey settling into your bones, and step outside into the pale sunlight. The camp stirs softly. Horses nuzzle at saddlebags. Children chase each other in clumsy circles, and the air smells faintly of drying grass and pine. It is a ritual of peace, a soft weaving of the day's beginning and the night's memory. You watch as an elder ladles warm tea into small cups, offering each guest a sip that tastes like comfort itself. Here, at the end of your journey, feasting feels different, less a spectacle, less a necessity. It was about identity, power, survival, connection, and sometimes, simple kindness. Every bite you took, whether under the stars in a Kurultai or beside a quiet northern fire, was part of a larger story. A story of people who thrived not in spite of their harsh world, but because of it. You feel the warmth of the campfire still nestled in your chest, the lingering taste of roasted meat and sweet tea, a soft comfort against the quiet dark. Out here, beneath a sky full of stars, the world feels vast and intimate all at once, the sharp edges of history softened by the glow of shared meals and whispered tales. You sip too, feeling the warmth slide down your throat, and think about how food in the Mongol world was never just about hunger. You feel the pulse of an empire that fed not just on conquest, but on connection, on the simple, profound act of breaking bread together. The smell of dried herbs and smoke fades into a gentle scent of pine and fresh earth. You drift deeper, carried by the stories of those who lived and feasted under the same stars. But one thing is clear: Mongol feasting was a living, breathing tradition. It adapted, it traveled, it united. And as you sleep, you carry with you the rhythm of the Mongol feast, the endless ride, the shared fire, the enduring taste of home. As you watch the smoke rise slowly from the fires curling toward the sky like a gentle thread, you realize that every meal, historians still debate how much of this feast culture was intentional and how much was born of necessity and chance. You find yourself smiling, the kind of smile that comes from knowing you've witnessed something rare and wild and true. You take a deep breath, the smell of smoked meat and pine needles lingering in your senses. The horses neigh softly, the children laugh, and you feel, just for a moment, at home. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The night deepens gently, a slow exhale after the long day of stories and feasts. You close your eyes and imagine the crackling of fires scattered across the steppe, the murmurs of voices speaking ancient words, the laughter of children playing ankle-bone games under the watchful eyes of elders. Breath by breath, your body unwinds, the heaviness of the day dissolves, replaced by a calm that settles like a warm blanket. Tonight, you rest knowing you've glimpsed a world where every meal was a thread in the fabric of life, where food was language and love, survival and ceremony all wrapped into one. Good night.